Hi guys, TacticalRab again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. iLLeY is back on the timeline talking some trash about some of the other players it seems he's fighting with to try and get back into the CDL, believing that in many respects iLLeY is the man to get back into the league when the next round of roster changes are potentially made. Do the numbers imply that? What players may iLLeY be talking about today? What does Scrappy have to say about some of the older generation? Very much interested to your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Plenty to get into today. Thought this is pretty funny to start off with actually here from Dashy, because he comes out and says aBeZy, and they actually teamed together, I think, briefly on the Complexity team way back in the day, and I think that's what aBeZy implies and says if you watch the cross on P1 Island Forest, I'd still be in the league. And look, whether that's true or not, unlikely, just because that actually wasn't his final stint in the league. Like, okay, yes, they played World War II, but after that, you know, he obviously was on other teams and had other opportunities, such as on Midnight at the end of the season, and then on Los Angeles Guerrillas during the course of the Modern Warfare season. But yeah, it's a remarkable career that aBeZy had, really, because he was pretty gassed up as a rookie with the potential to make some impact when he was first coming into the league. He was always really good online, but he was just never able to translate that to LAN at all. And looking at these records on the left, it is, you know, particularly ugly, isn't it, compared to the talent that aBeZy had and did display on some occasions anyway. There was some talk on this yesterday as well, the breaking point or the Lion Man Simp career card. So he's won championships with the United and FaZe, and those are the only two teams that he's played for in his career. These numbers are pretty absurd. Like, I mean, not even pretty absurd. To play 38 events and be averaging a placement of 2.74 is ludicrous. His series win-loss is 75%. Of course, he's won 2 world championships, $1.8 million in prize money. The only number, I mean, like, look, to play 38 events and make 26 finals is an incredible return, but to only win 12 of those, that's the only thing, isn't it, right? Like, that's the only thing, and you can argue how much that should hold Simp back in the all-time discussions, because the all-time discussions will continue to be had with this guy as to where he sits in terms of the all-time SMGs. You know, is he already the second best SMG ever behind Scump? I think absolutely you can argue that. Some would argue that he's even better than Scump, but I think it's very difficult to make that case, to be honest, and it will continue to be for probably the rest of time in COD for various reasons. But look, if Simp gets to 3 rings, if he starts bringing up his finals win records, then, you know, he's pretty undeniable, and he has been undeniable for a very long period of time indeed. So yeah, kind of remarkable numbers. I guess what's more interesting is where he sits in the all-time rankings. Like, is he top 5 ever? Like, has he overtaken Clay? Has he overtaken Formal? Has, you know, he overtaken the likes of like an Eggs or something? I think you could argue definitely yes, but it's difficult to say how you break into the top, because a lot of those guys I mentioned, the Formals, the Claces, etc., you know, I think maybe Claces won 18, 19 events, something in that ballpark. Formal's won in the 20s. So obviously it's a different time, it's a different era, but it's always difficult to compare the eras, as we well know. And that's what Scrappy was trying to do yesterday as well, and we'll get to that in a second. This was kind of cool. So Shadow was looking back at some of the COD Gamepedia stuff and looking back at some of these old games, finding, for example, this one, Echo Fox versus OpTic Gaming back in the day. This, of course, when the OpTic Dynasty was still a thing. I mean, look at this team. Crowder, M. Ruiz, Mosh, and Method, if you guys remember that. This is on Breakout. Wow, that's a real throwback. Breakout Search and Destroy during the Infinite Warfare year, where, of course, this team went on to win the World Championship. Zinni this map went 11-6 for the win, and then they played Uplink. Zinni was 27-22, but they lost this one, of course, on Throwback Uplink. And so, yeah, pretty remarkable stuff to have a look at some of these scoreboards from back in the day. And as Zinni says, wow, got costed against the Dynasty and Infinite Warfare champs, right? So, yeah, remarkable stuff. But Kremp says, I don't know what you were talking about, because, you know, he was cooking. Kremp here goes 23-22, so, you know, 1.05. Absolutely balling as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, there was a bit of drama about this, right? So Chino was talking about Encourage, and there was this whole thread that we talked about the other day. We discussed this yesterday, right? And people were then clowning Chin and trying to say, oh, this guy wasn't like as good as he once was. This guy, for example, says, bragging about getting backpacked by Study one event 13 years ago. So, you know, it's always a thing, isn't it, right? Like, people maybe didn't watch back in the day, not giving so much credit to the original players, like to some of the OGs. And Chin then said, all right, okay, fine, I'll find a receipt and all that. And going back and finding some of the receipts each in this. This is against like one of those prime Envy teams, Karma, Proofy, Rambo, and Merc. And Chino at this point's 20 and 11 with his roster. Obviously, the guy said that he got carried by Study, and he says now that wasn't the case. Here was the Search and Destroy when he was 11 and 5. Tipsy, Gucci, Study, and Chino, man, that really does bring me back. But at the same time, Scrappy, among others, were giving their perspectives. So yeah, here was Scrap in the Twitch chat here, and he was making his points on Machilla, because Machilla then quote tweeted this one, as we'll see here, and because as he says, I don't know why people think COD was easier back then. I was playing formal for top 8 in a cup, not Exceed. So, you know, poor Exceed continuing to catch some strays. But an interesting take. Look, you can see this on both sides, because formal might say, I was playing Machilla for top 8 in a cup, like, no big deal. But, look, that was how it was back then. And I do generally think that it's always a difficult debate. Big Tummy gave his thoughts on it. The discussion between the different eras. Is it clear to say, oh, this era was better than that era? It never really works like that for various reasons in various different sports. The level of like technology, the fact that the teams have coaches and analysts nowadays, the fact that the teams are actually doing this on a full-time basis and making serious salaries. That was not the case back then. It was simply you go to the event, you try and fund it yourself usually, and if you didn't win, then you went home with nothing and you were eating, you know, baked beans on toast for the... Okay, Americans don't do them, you know what I mean? Like eating rice and beans for the rest of the week. I also think that in many respects, the game was actually just harder back then. Like the games were harder to shoot in. Nowadays, the aim assist is out of control in my opinion. Back then, the weapons, like let's say, I mean, Black Ops 2 I always give the example of, but the SMGs in that game, they would not have aim assist after, I think it was 38 meters, the aim assist disappeared. So you couldn't just map someone for free with a sub like you can nowadays. It was a different time, and yeah, different players for sure. And Scrappy's perspective would be, look, those guys back then were not as good as the players of today. And I get that opinion, but also Scrap wouldn't have a job in the league if it wasn't for these guys building up the scene. So probably show some respect. But yeah, as he says, Machilla's a top 24 player. I think what he means is top 24 placing player. Although I think Machilla even came back, like didn't he come back last year and like qualify on a team that made the elite or something while not even playing very seriously? So, you know, some of these old guys have still got it for sure. And obviously Scrap and some of the newer gen players might have a different opinion, but Scrap's opinion is that like everyone was terrible, and I don't even know exactly what he means by they're better than the terrible teams back then. Obviously it's not the right there anyway. So yeah, okay, whatever. It's Scrappy giving some thoughts on the Twitch chat. There's probably not too much to say on it. We've heard his conversations on this type of topic before. I do want to get into the iLLeY stuff though. There was some 8s going down last night. Just interested as always to see who was getting involved in this. So yeah, Shotzzy, it was yeah, Shotzzy, Dashy, Skyz and Neptune. Drazah, Hook, Rael and Hyde was another one, and then they played a series of Drazah, aBeZy, Dashy and Hook and Skyz, Scrap, Shotzzy and Rael. So yeah, nice to see some of these guys getting involved as always. But this was the tweet yesterday from iLLeY that grabbed my attention. All these piss stains going to get reminded soon. So iLLeY wasn't even going to play this year, wasn't sure what he was doing. Then he came back kind of out of nowhere, was like, oh no, I'm coming back, I'm making the return. Then he went to Yoda King, and now he's back again. People are still taking the piss out of the piss out of the Yoda King thing, aren't they? Which is always pretty funny. And people in the replies are suggesting, what about the Falcons? Could that be a possibility? Actions speak louder than words, Yoda. So yeah, as iLLeY says, I'm coming back. That's what he did. He came back to challenges with the intention to grind out challenges and get back into the league by dropping some good performances. And he has dropped some good performances, but he's not exactly top of the list. Like, he's not gone down to challenges and absolutely fried everyone to such an extent that he's guaranteed to get picked up back to the league. In Search and Destroy, he kind of has, and that could be very valuable for some teams. Like, we know that, especially teams in the mid-pack, their chances really of making a run at a tournament and, you know, actually making some serious prize money and success for their org usually comes down to Search and Destroy. I mean, look, Ravens came top 4 at the major in Madrid. And were they really very good apart from winning searches? Not really. And it was the same story online, but they made the run as a result. And even, you know, Miami Heretics, they also made their name really by obviously beating Rocker in Game 5 and some of these important moments. The same for OpTic as well. So search is very important for these teams, and iLLeY clearly is suggesting that some of these guys that are maybe disrespecting him, whether that's league players or whether that's players that he's competing against in challenges, are going to get reminded real soon just how good he is. So these are some of the KD numbers. During the Stage 1 Elites, just for some reference here, Lunas was topping the lines. Darksived up here as well, I think an interesting player. Trey was giving him some gas on the watch party the other on the pre-show, on the Dope Check show, whatever, the other day. Because he's had some good, I think he won the most recent cup, right, that they played. Neptune with a 1.11, he of course then gets picked up to the league, and some other very notable players as well. In Search and Destroy, this is where iLLeY is most notable, but to be fair, Darksived with a 1.56 in the Elite Stage 1 in Search. So he's definitely a name that should be in the conversation. What really matters here is who turns up to Dallas and wins the Challengers event there. That's going to really matter. But even Fire, you know, formerly Fire 40, he's been cooking at 1.34. Lurks, Lunas, Neptune, Johnny, among other notable names. But iLLeY's here as well with a 1.3, right? I think iLLeY had basically a 1 flat in the respawns overall, but he had a 1.3 in the searches. So it shows that, you know, look, is it a surprise? iLLeY's great at search, like we know this. But if he was to get signs, what team would potentially be interested in getting him into the roster, right? Because there are a few teams out there in the league that could potentially benefit from some Search and Destroy improvements, and also teams that, you know, their AR players are potentially struggling quite significantly, right? Boston, to me, is an interesting one, but their Game 5s have actually been all right. You know, it's interesting though with the team because Cammy, at least by the numbers, his Search and Destroy has been the worst. But he actually had a good one against Falcons the other day. And then Awakening was also, you know, 0.93 in Search as well, so he's not that far ahead. But to be fair, if you look at their season, of course, the Boston guys, they've played quite a lot of Game 5s, and they've won a reasonable chunk of them. Like, they're not terrible at Search. They could be better, but they're not terrible. But a better AR in Search and Destroy is something they maybe should be considering. Ravens, I mean, it's an option, I guess, but I don't really see it making too much sense. And it's not like their Search and Destroy is the problem with the way that things currently are. Cloud9, they've started to look a little bit better. Will iLLeY fit in there for someone like a Tatch? I don't really think they would do that. Gentlemates, to me, was the team that maybe was an opportunity because they're a roster that if they want to make a run, they're probably going to start, you know, got to start winning some Game 5s. Priestahh, though, has been benched for Lunas, which I think is probably the correct call, but it means that there's no opportunity for iLLeY. He's not going to go to Thieves, nor to Miami. Rocker was an option, I think, for Paul X, but now Paul's playing better, so that doesn't really work. OpTic doesn't work, like they're not going to bring him back in there. I mean, look, people are going to suggest it for iLLeY to come back in for Kenny, but I really don't think that they're going to try that again. I don't think the organisation would want to do it. I don't think the Shotzzy would want to do it, but maybe I'm wrong. I just don't see it personally. Toronto, their ARs are fine. Like, I don't see any changes there. And then Surge, they've started to look good as well. And then Falcons, realistically, probably isn't going to be happening either. So you look at the teams, and like, I don't know, what's the most likely team for iLLeY to go to? Boston and maybe OpTic? Like, it feels, yeah, I don't know if that's actually going to happen. And Twitter, your perspective in the comment section below, of course, because definitely some questions to be raised on this situation as it stands. But iLLeY's talking the trash. Can he back up the trash talk? Because at the end of the day, if you're not going to win, I think he was top 3 his team, the most recent Challengers Cup, then you're not going to get picked up back to the league. And at the end of the day, what really matters for iLLeY and these teams is what happens at the LAN in Dallas. Because if iLLeY's team turns up there and wins, then iLLeY's right in that conversation, and other teams that we've just discussed over the last couple of minutes will maybe not be as good in a couple of weeks as they are today. So very much interested in your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.
Okay.
Alright, one top mid, one P1 that is left.
Why is it? Garmin's cheating. Top mid. Garmin's fucking cheating. Top mid. Nice. Head dead.
Back left, nice.
No way, these guys getting 60. Fucking awful. Get on.
Nice. One bit again. Shower.
Spawn bottom dead.
Wait, they spawn there?
This guy's actually. That map was fucked, dude. I don't give a fuck. That was fucked. My shit felt fucked. Holy fuck.
Yo, put out there.
Holy fuck.